Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES horizon, watching the stars through the main screen. His ship had been exploring space for 3 months now, looking for new worlds and signs of alien life. The crew was getting used to the routine of jumping from one star system to another, scanning planets, and moving on. "Captain, we're getting some strange readings," said Dr. Lisa Park from her science station. She was the ship's chief science officer, a woman who loved discovering new things about the universe. Her fingers moved quickly over her controls as she studied the data flowing across her screen. Jake walked over to her station. "Energy signatures I've never seen before. They're massive, sir. Whatever is making them has to be huge." Lisa looked up at him with wide eyes. "And they're moving this way." Commander Ryan Hill, the ship's tactical officer, turned from his position. "Captain, my sensors are picking up multiple contacts. They're big, and they're definitely not natural objects." Jake felt his heart beat faster. After years of searching, had they finally found proof that humans were not alone in the universe? "How many contacts, Ryan?" 12 large vessels, sir. Maybe more behind them. They're in formation, moving like a military fleet." Lieutenant Katie Brooks, who handled all communications for the ship, suddenly looked up from her station. "Captain, I'm receiving a transmission. It's not in any human language, but our computers are trying to translate it." Jake moved to the center of the bridge. This was the moment every space explorer dreamed of, and feared at the same time. "Put it on screen, Katie." The main screen flickered and showed an image of a creature that made several crew members step back in surprise. It was huge, at least 8 feet tall, with dark green scales covering its body like natural armor. Its eyes were yellow and cold, and its mouth was full of sharp teeth. The alien looked like a giant reptile that had learned to stand on 2 legs and wear military uniforms. When the alien spoke, the ship's computer translated its words into English. "Unknown vessel, you have entered the territory of the Vorthach Empire. I am Admiral Zekthorn, commander of the 3rd Battle Fleet. Identify yourselves immediately or be destroyed." Jake took a deep breath. It trained for this moment his entire career, but nothing could have prepared him for facing such a frightening-looking alien. Still he kept his voice calm and steady. "Admiral Zekthorn, I am Captain Jake Morrison of the human exploration vessel U.S. Horizon. We come in peace and wish to establish friendly contact with your people." The alien admiral stared at him for a long moment. Jake could see other Vorthach moving around behind Zekthorn, all of them looking just as dangerous as their leader. They seemed surprised by Jake's calm response. "Humans," Zekthorn said slowly, as if testing the word. "You are not afraid?" "Are curious? Not afraid?" Jake replied. "We would be honored to meet with you and learn about your civilization." Dr. Lisa Park stepped forward. "Admiral, if I may, we have traveled very far to find other intelligent life in the universe. This is a historic moment for both our species." Zekthorn's yellow eyes moved to Lisa, then back to Jake. "You wish to meet face to face?" "Willing, yes. We believe that peaceful communication is the best way for different species to understand each other." Behind Zekthorn, other Vorthach were talking quickly in their own language. Jake could see that they seemed confused by the human response. The computer picked up some of their words and translated them. Words like strange and unexpected appeared on a small screen near Katie's station. "Very well, humans," Zekthorn said finally. "You will come aboard my flagship. Come alone, but know that any attempt at treachery will result in the immediate destruction of your vessel." "Understood, Admiral. However, I would prefer to bring a small diplomatic team with me. Our protocol suggests that first contact should involve representatives from different areas of expertise." Zekthorn thought about this for a moment. "You may bring 3 others. No more." "Yeah, we'll follow our security procedures exactly." "Agreed. Thank you for this opportunity, Admiral." The transmission ended, and the bridge fell silent. Jake looked around at his crew. Everyone was staring at him with a mixture of excitement and worry. Jake said with a small smile, "It looks like we're about to make history, Commander." Ryan Hill frowned. "Captain, are you sure this is wise? Those aliens look like they could tear us apart with their bare hands." "That's exactly why we need to handle this carefully, Ryan. They're clearly a military-focused species, but they agreed to talk instead of just attacking us. That tells me they have honor and intelligence. Dr. Lisa Park was already gathering her equipment. Captain, I request permission to be part of the diplomatic team. As a scientist, I need to document this contact for humanity. Granted, Lisa. Katie, I want you there too. Your communication skills might be crucial if we have translation problems. Lieutenant Katie Brooks nodded nervously. Yes, sir. Should I bring backup communication equipment? Good thinking. If things go wrong, I'll need someone who understands military thinking. Sir, shouldn't I stay here to protect the ship? Lieutenant Commander Sarah Davis can handle things here. I need your expertise with me on that alien ship. As the crew prepared for the historic meeting, Jake stood alone for a moment, looking out at the Vorthach fleet. The alien ships were massive, dark, and covered in what looked like weapons. Each one was probably capable of destroying the horizon with a single shot, but they were talking instead of shooting. And that gave Jake hope. Dr. Lisa Park came up beside him. Captain, what do you think they're really like? I think they're probably not so different from us, Lisa. They have military ranks, organized fleets, and they understand the concept of diplomacy. Those are all things that intelligent species tend to develop, but they look so dangerous. Jake nodded. They probably evolved on a world where being dangerous was necessary for survival, but dangerous doesn't mean evil, it just means we need to be respectful and careful. An hour later, Jake and his team stood in the shuttle bay, preparing to transfer to the Vorthach flagship. They were wearing their best uniforms and carrying gifts that represented the best of human culture. Music recordings, art images, scientific data, and samples of Earth literature. Katie checked her translation equipment one more time. Captain, what if the computers can't translate everything correctly? Then we'll use gestures, drawings, and patience. As their shuttle approached the Vorthach ship, Jake looked through the window and marveled at the size of the alien vessel. It was at least 10 times larger than the horizon, with a design that looked both beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Be respectful. Be brave and be curious. The shuttle docked with the Vorthach ship, and Jake took a deep breath. In a few moments, he would be the first human to set foot on an alien vessel and meet face-to-face with beings from another world. History was about to be made, and Captain Jake Morrison was ready to make sure it started on the right note. Future of both species might depend on what happened in the next few hours. The inside of the Vorthach flagship was unlike anything Jake Morrison had ever seen. The corridors were wide and tall, built for beings much larger than humans. The walls were made of dark metal that seemed to absorb light, and everything had sharp angles and military precision. As Jake and his team walked through the ship, escorted by 4 massive Vorthach warriors, they could feel the eyes of curious aliens watching them from every doorway and corridor. Admiral Zekthorn waited for them in what was clearly a meeting room designed to intimidate visitors. The ceiling was 3 times higher than it needed to be for humans, and the walls displayed weapons from different Vorthach worlds. The Admiral stood behind a table made from what looked like black stone, his yellow eyes studying the humans as they entered. Captain Morrison, Zekthorn said in his deep, rumbling voice. You are smaller than I expected. Jake stepped forward and gave a respectful bow. Admiral Zekthorn, we are honored by your invitation. We come as representatives of humanity, hoping to begin a friendship between our peoples. The Admiral made a sound that might have been laughter, but it was not a pleasant sound. Friendship. An interesting concept. In our experience, there are only 2 types of species in this galaxy, those strong enough to survive and those who serve the strong. Dr. Lisa Park stepped forward with her recording equipment. Admiral, with your permission, we would like to document this historic meeting. Our people will want to know about this first contact. Zekthorn studied her for a moment. You are there. Knowledge keeper. I am a scientist. I study life and try to understand how different species develop. Interesting. We have those as well, though they also serve as warriors when needed. The Admiral moved around the table, his massive form casting shadows over the humans. Tell me, humans, What makes you think you deserve to exist as a free species? Commander Ryan Hill tensed at the threatening tone, but Jake remained calm. We believe all intelligent life has value, Admiral. We hope to prove that through our actions and our willingness to learn. Words are easy, Captain Morrison. Actions show true worth. Keftarn stopped directly in front of Jake. I propose a test. 3 challenges, as is our tradition when meeting a new species. If you succeed, you will have earned the right to exist freely in this galaxy. If you fail, you will serve the Vorthach Empire, as all weak species do. Gosh. Jake felt his heart racing, but he kept his voice steady. What kind of challenges? First, physical combat. One of your warriors against one of ours. Second, strategic warfare. Simulation, your best tactical mind against our war masters. Third, survival on one of our training worlds. A mixed team from both our species must survive together for 7 days. The human team exchanged glances. These were not the diplomatic discussions Jake had hoped for, but he could see that refusing would mean war between the species. I accept. Your challenges, Admiral? But I request that this be seen as a test of understanding between our peoples, not a contest of dominance. Zekthern made that unpleasant laughing sound again. You may call it whatever you wish, human. The results will speak for themselves. 2 hours later, Jake stood in what the Vorthach called their combat arena. It was a large circular room with a floor made of some kind of tough material that could absorb impacts. Around the edges, dozens of Vorthach warriors had gathered to watch. The first challenge, Marine Sergeant Tony Rodriguez, stood in the center of the arena, looking very small compared to his opponent. Cracksmall was one of the largest Vorthach Jake had ever seen, nearly 9 feet tall and covered in thick scales that looked like natural armor. His arms were as thick as tree trunks, and his claws could probably cut through metal. You sure about this, Sergeant? Jake asked quietly. Tony grinned and adjusted his fighting gloves. Captain, I've been in tough fights before. The trick isn't to be stronger than your opponent. The trick is to be smarter and more stubborn. The Vorthach referee, a scarred veteran named War Leader Thex, explained the rules. Combat continues until one fighter cannot stand or chooses to surrender. No weapons except natural ones. No killing unless absolutely necessary. Cracksmell roared and beat his chest, showing off his impressive muscles and sharp claws. Watching Vorthach cheered and made threatening sounds. Tony just stood quietly watching his opponent and thinking. When the fight began, Cracksmall charged forward like an angry bull, expecting to overpower the small human quickly. But Tony had studied the way Vorthach moved during his time on the ship. He rolled to the side at the last second, letting the huge alien crash into the wall behind him. The Vorthach audience fell silent. They had never seen anyone avoid Cracksmall's opening charge. Tony used his speed and smaller size to his advantage, staying away from those powerful claws and landing quick hits whenever he could. He couldn't hurt the Vorthach through his natural armor, but he could confuse and frustrate him. For 15 minutes, Tony danced around the arena, making Cracksmell chase him and tire himself out. The human was getting tired too, but he was used to endurance fighting. Every time the Vorthach got close, Tony would dodge, roll, or slide away. Finally, Cracksmall managed to grab Tony with one huge hand. The watching Vorthach cheered, thinking. The fight was over. But instead of trying to break free, Tony did something unexpected. He grabbed onto Cracksmall's arm and used his own weight to throw the giant alien off balance. Both fighters crashed to the ground. Cracksmall was stronger, but Tony was more flexible. They rolled and struggled on the arena floor, with the human using techniques the Vorthach had never seen before. In the end, Cracksmall's superior strength won out. He pinned Tony to the ground and could have easily killed him. But instead of delivering a finishing blow, the Vorthach warrior stopped and looked down at the human. You fight with honor, Cracksmall said in broken English. You do not give up, even when defeat is certain. Tony, breathing hard and bruised all over, managed to smile. That's what humans do. We keep trying until we can't try anymore. Cracksmall released him and helped him stand up. The arena was completely silent. Then, slowly, The Vorthach began to make a rhythmic sound by hitting their chests. Jake realized it was their way of showing respect. Admiral Zekthern stepped into the arena. Now, the human warrior is defeated, but he has shown courage and determination. This is acceptable for the first challenge. The second challenge took place the next day in the ship's Strategic Simulation Center. Colonel Amy Foster, who had joined them from the Horizon, sat across from General Dekvar, one of the most respected war leaders in the Vorthach military. The simulation involved commanding fleets of ships in various battle scenarios. The Vorthach had been using these tests for thousands of years to train their officers. Amy had studied everything she could about Vorthach military tactics during her time on their ship. She noticed that they preferred direct attacks and overwhelming force. Their strategies were effective but predictable. In the first simulation, Amy commanded a small human fleet against a larger Vorthach force. Instead of meeting them head-on, she divided her ships into smaller groups and attacked from multiple directions at once. The Vorthach simulation was not programmed for such tactics, and Amy won as Ellie. General Dekvar's eyes widened. "Run it again. This time I will adjust for your unusual approach." The second simulation was more challenging. Dekvar had learned from Amy's first victory and tried to counter her spreading tactics. But Amy adapted too, using feints and false retreats to confuse the Vorthach responses. By the end of the day, Amy had won 6 simulations and lost 4. More importantly, she had shown the watching Vorthach officers new ways of thinking about warfare. Your strategic mind is creative, General, Dekvar admitted. "We have never seen tactics like yours. They are not honorable in the traditional sense, but they are effective," Amy smiled. "In human military thinking, the most honorable thing is to win while losing as few people as possible. Sometimes that means being tricky instead of just being strong." The third challenge would take place on Keth Minor, a training world similar to the Vorthach homeworld. Jake watched as a team of humans and Vorthach prepared to spend 7 days surviving together in one of the harshest environments in the galaxy. The team included survival expert Ben Carter, engineer Maria Santos, and medic Dr. Alex Turner from the human side. 3 young Vorthach warriors would join them, along with 1 experienced trainer. As the mixed team prepared to beam down to the planet's surface, Jake felt nervous. This challenge would test whether the 2 species could actually work together, not just fight against each other. "Remember," Jake told his people, "this isn't about proving humans are better than Vorthach. It's about showing that we can survive and help each other." Ben Carter nodded. "Don't worry, Captain. Humans have been surviving in tough places for thousands of years. We'll figure it out." As the team disappeared in the transport beam, Jake could only wait and hope that 7 days later, they would return alive and successful. The future of humanity might depend on it. Ben Carter wiped sweat from his face as he looked around at the harsh landscape of Keth Minor. The sky was orange from constant dust storms, and the ground was covered with sharp rocks that could cut through boot leather. In the distance, he could see active volcanoes shooting lava into the air. This was definitely not a vacation planet. "Okay, team," Ben said to the mixed group of humans and Vorthach. "First thing we need is shelter. Those dust storms look like they come through here regularly." The 3 young Vorthach warriors, Kekstar, Vexnul, and Zarkith, stood nearby looking confident. They had trained on worlds like this before. Their thick scales protected them from the sharp rocks, and their natural strength made carrying heavy materials easy. "Humans are weak," Kekstar said bluntly. "You will slow us down and probably die before the 7 days are finished." Dr. Alex Turner, who was already checking his medical supplies, looked up calmly. "We might surprise you." Engineer Maria Santos was studying the terrain with her equipment. "Ben, I'm reading some interesting mineral deposits about 2 kilometers north. If we can get there, I might be able to build us some useful tools." The Vorthach trainer, an older warrior named Instructor Gekster, watched the humans with interest. He had seen many species attempt survival on Vorthach training worlds. Most lasted only a day or 2. "Very well," Gekster said. "Show us what humans can do." The first day was brutal. Temperature reached levels that would have killed most species, but the humans adapted quickly. Ben taught everyone how to wrap cloth around their heads to protect from the dust storms. Maria found ways to use the volcanic rock to create crude tools. Alex showed them techniques for finding and purifying water from underground springs. By evening, they had built a shelter that impressed even the Vorthach. Instead of just piling rocks together like the aliens usually did, the humans had created a structure with multiple chambers, ventilation systems, and even a water collection system. "How did you know to do this?" Vexnell asked, genuinely curious. Maria smiled as she adjusted their makeshift air filter. "Humans have lived in difficult places on our world for thousands of years. We learned to use our brains when our bodies were not strong enough." On the second day, they encountered their first real danger. A pack of Keth hounds, six-legged predators with metal-hard teeth, had picked up their scent. These creatures were what young Vorthach warriors usually fought to prove their bravery. The Vorthach immediately prepared for battle. But Ben held up his hand. "Wait, let's try something different first." He had noticed that the Keth hounds were staying at a certain distance, not attacking directly. They're being cautious. That means they're smart, not just aggressive. Ben slowly pulled out some of their dried food rations and tossed them toward the creatures. The Keth hounds sniffed the food carefully, then ate it. After a few minutes, they stopped showing threatening behavior. "You fed them?" Zarketh asked in amazement. "But they are dangerous predators." "They were hungry predators," Alex explained. "Most creatures only attack when they have to. If you give them what they need, they often leave you alone." Dr. Alex Turner had been watching the young Vorthach warriors deal with small injuries from the rough terrain. He noticed they just ignored cuts and bruises that would have sent humans to a medical station. "May I look at that wound on your arm, Kextar?" Alex asked. The young Vorthach looked confused. "It is nothing. Vorthach do not worry about small injuries." "Understand you are tough, but preventing infection is still important. May I show you some human medical techniques?" Reluctantly, Kextar allowed Alex to clean and treat his wound. The human doctor used methods that were gentler than Vorthach medicine, but just as effective. "This does not hurt," Kextar said with surprise. "Vorthach medical treatment is usually painful." "Pain does not always mean healing," Alex explained. "Sometimes the gentler approach works better in the long run." Back on the Vorthach flagship, Captain Jake Morrison and Admiral Zekthorn were having their own cultural exchange. Jake had brought along some human music and art to share with the alien leader. "This sound," Zekthorn said as he listened to a piece of human classical music. "What purpose does it serve?" "It is not for communication or warfare." Jake smiled. "We call it music. Create it for beauty and emotional expression. It helps us feel connected to each other and to express feelings that are difficult to put into words." The Admiral listened carefully to the entire piece. "It creates sensations that I have not experienced before." "Do all humans create such things?" "Many of us do. We also create visual art, stories, and poetry. We believe that creating beautiful things makes life more meaningful." Dr. Lisa Park was working with Vorthach xenobiologist scientist Vex Quinn in the ship's laboratory. They were comparing biological data from both species, making discoveries that fascinated them both. "Your species has remarkable adaptability," Vex Quinn observed. "You can survive in many different environments without major physical changes." "Yes, but your species has incredible specialization," Lisa replied. "Your natural armor, strength, and sensory abilities are far superior to ours in combat situations. Appears we evolved for different types of survival," Vex Quinn said thoughtfully. "You developed cooperation and tool creation. We developed individual physical power and dominance hierarchies." The two scientists worked together for hours, sharing information and theories. They discovered that both species had faced extinctional events in their early history, but had responded in completely different ways. "Your ancestors survived by working together and sharing knowledge," Vex Quinn explained. "Our ancestors survived by becoming stronger and more aggressive than the threats they faced." Lisa nodded. "But look what happened. Both approaches worked. Both our species became successful and spread across space."
On the fourth day of the survival challenge,
The mixed team faced their biggest test yet. A massive volcanic eruption had started nearby. and toxic gases were spreading across their area. The Vorthach wanted to simply move to higher ground and wait it out. But the humans had a different idea. Maria had been studying the mineral deposits and gas flow patterns. If we build a filtration system using these volcanic minerals, we can actually purify the air around our shelter, she explained. This is impossible, Instructor Gexter said. No one fights volcanic gas. You run from it, or you die from it. But Ben and Maria had already started working on their idea. They used their engineering knowledge, combined with materials they had gathered over the previous days, to create a system that could clean the poison from the air. The Vorthach watched in amazement as the humans turned a deadly threat into a manageable problem using nothing but creativity and scientific knowledge. How did you learn to think like this? Vexnell asked. What if and why not a lot, Ben explained as he adjusted their air filter. We try new things even when they seem impossible. By the 5th day, something remarkable was happening. The Vorthach warriors were starting to think more like humans, looking for creative solutions instead of just using brute force. The humans were learning from Vorthach toughness and determination. Zark, Keth, had learned to use human-style problem-solving to find food sources that Vorthach training had never taught him about. Kextar was using Alex's medical techniques to help treat a Vorthach who had been injured in a small rock slide. Meanwhile, the humans were pushing themselves physically harder than they ever had before, inspired by Vorthach endurance and strength. On the 6th day, they received an emergency signal. A trading station in a nearby system was under attack by unknown alien ships. Both the human and Vorthach crews had detected the distress call. Captain Jake Morrison and Admiral Zekthern met in the Admiral's command center to discuss the situation. The station has civilians from several different species, Jake said, studying the tactical display. They need help immediately. Zekthern nodded grimly. The attackers appear to be Zelani collective forces. They are raiders who capture other species for slave labor. Then we have to help them, Jake said without hesitation. Agreed. But Captain Morrison, this would require our fleets to work together. Vorthach and human ships fighting side by side. Jake looked at the alien admiral he had come to respect over the past week. Are you willing to try that, Admiral? Psst. Made what Jake had learned was the Vorthach equivalent of a smile. I believe it is time to see what our species can accomplish together. As both fleets prepared for their first joint military operation, Jake realized that the survival challenge had become something more important than any test. It had become the foundation of a partnership that could change both their species forever. The rescue mission to save the trading station had gone better than anyone expected. Human ships and Vorthach vessels had worked together like they had been allies for years, instead of strangers who had just met. Captain Jake Morrison watched from the bridge of the UES Horizon as the last civilian ships escaped from the burning station. All civilians are clear, Captain, reported Lieutenant Katie Brooks. The Vorthach rescue teams got everyone out safely. Jake nodded, but he felt worried about something. The attack had been too organized, too professional. These were not simple pirates looking for easy targets. On the Vorthach flagship, Admiral Zekthern was thinking the same thing. The Zelani collective ships had retreated too quickly when the combined human Vorthach fleet arrived. Usually, raiders fought harder before giving up. Admiral, said Lieutenant Sam Green, a human intelligence officer who had transferred to the Vorthach ship for the mission, I found something strange in the station's computer systems. Sam was a young woman who specialized in finding hidden information and understanding enemy plans. She had been working with Kefsar, a Vorthach spy master who was expert at gathering intelligence during military operations. What did you discover? Admiral Zekthern asked. The Zelani were not just raiding for slaves and supplies, Sam explained. They were collecting biological samples from all the different species on the station. Blood, tissue, genetic material. Kefsar, who looked like other Vorthach but moved more quietly and observed everything carefully, added his own findings. We also discovered they left behind scanning equipment hidden in the station's medical bay. They were studying the people they captured, not just enslaving them. Jake arrived on the Vorthach flagship an hour later for an emergency meeting. Dr. Lisa Park and Dr. Alex Turner came with him, along with Commander Ryan Hill. The humans in Vorthach had been sharing information freely since their successful joint operation. The evidence suggests the Zelani collective is working on some kind of biological project. Dr. Lisa Park explained to the mixed group of human and Vorthach officers, but we need more information to understand what they are planning. Alex Turner had been studying the medical data they recovered from the station. The samples they took were very specific. They seem most interested in species that are considered physically strong or have unusual resistance to disease. Admiral Zektharn looked troubled. Species like the Vorthach, you mean? And potentially like humans, Alex replied. Our immune systems and adaptability might be of interest to them as well. Scientist Vexquin, who had become close friends with Dr. Lisa Park during their research exchanges, presented her analysis. If the Zelani are trying to create biological weapons, they would need genetic information from their intended targets. This would allow them to design diseases or toxins that affect specific species. The room fell silent as everyone realized what this meant. The Zelani were not just raiders anymore. They were preparing for large-scale warfare using weapons that could wipe out entire species. We need more information, Jake said firmly. We cannot fight an enemy we do not understand. Kefsar stepped forward. I have contacts in neutral territory who might have information about Zelani activities. But investigating this will be dangerous. Sam Green volunteered immediately. I will go with Kefsar. Human and Vorthach intelligence working together might be more effective than either of us working alone. Over the next few days, Jake and Admiral Zektharn worked to coordinate their investigation efforts. They discovered that their species had very different approaches to gathering intelligence. But these differences made them stronger when combined. Humans were good at analyzing patterns, using technology to process large amounts of information, and thinking about problems from unusual angles. Vorthach were excellent at direct observation, understanding military behavior, and getting information through personal contacts and intimidation. The investigation teams sent back regular reports that painted an increasingly frightening picture. The Zelani collective had been collecting biological samples from dozens of species across the galaxy. They had built secret research facilities on remote planets, where they were conducting experiments that violated every known law of civilized behavior. They are not just creating weapons, Dr. Alex Turner reported during one of their daily briefings. They are trying to create a biological agent that can target multiple species at once, something that could eliminate entire star systems of different aliens with a single release. Dr. Lisa Park and scientist Vexquin had been working together to understand the science behind the Zelani research. Their combined knowledge of human and Vorthach biology was helping them piece together the enemy plan. The frightening thing is that they are close to success, Lisa explained to the assembled officers. If they complete this weapon, they could potentially eliminate any species they consider a threat to their expansion. Engineer Maria Santos, who had returned from the survival challenge with new respect from the Vorthach, was working with Vorthach. Techmaster forged Cool to develop countermeasures. Their collaboration was producing innovations that neither species could have achieved alone. We are combining human-computer technology with Vorthach materials science, Maria explained. The result is detection equipment that can identify biological weapons much more quickly than anything either of our species had before. But the most important breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Healer Nix Thursday, a Vorthach bioscientist, who specialized in treating battlefield injuries, had been working with Dr. Alex Turner to develop medical countermeasures. Vorthach natural immunity is very different from human immune system responses, Nix Thursday explained. But when we combine our approaches, we can create treatments that work against a much wider range of biological threats. Alex nodded enthusiastically. No, X Thursday is right. Our species evolved different ways of fighting disease and toxins. Together, we can probably develop defenses against almost anything the Zelani create. As the investigation continued, it became clear that the threat was even larger than they had first thought. Sam Green and Kefsar discovered that the Zelani were planning to test their biological weapon on the strongest species first. They want to eliminate the Vorthach Empire and humanity as soon as their weapon is ready, Sam reported during an emergency communication from deep space. They see both our species as the biggest threats to their plans for galactic domination. Jake and Admiral Zekthern realized they had to make a difficult decision. Fighting the Zelani collective would require a formal alliance between humans and Vorthach, something that many people in both civilizations would find difficult to accept. My people have always believed that strength comes from independence, Admiral Zekthorn admitted during a private conversation with Jake. Asking them to ally with another species will be challenging. Some humans will worry about aligning. With a military culture like yours, Jake replied honestly. They will fear that we might become more aggressive and lose our peaceful nature. But both leaders knew they had no choice. The Zelani threat was too large for either species to handle alone. We need each other, Jake said finally. The Vorthach have the military strength and galactic influence to fight a war like this. Humans have the technological innovation and adaptability to develop new solutions quickly. Admiral Zekthern agreed. And we have already proven that we work well together. The rescue mission showed that our different approaches make us stronger, not weaker. They began the difficult process of convincing their respective governments to approve a formal alliance. There were heated debates on both sides, the politicians and military leaders expressing doubts about trusting such different species, but the evidence of the Zelani threat was overwhelming. When Sam Green and Kefsar returned with proof that the biological weapon was almost ready for testing, both governments finally agreed to move forward. The alliance treaty was signed aboard a neutral space station, with representatives from both species present. Jake watched as Admiral Zekthern signed the document with his clawed hand, officially making humans and Vorthach partners in defending the galaxy. This is only the beginning, Zekthern said as they finished the ceremony. Now we must prepare for war against an enemy that threatens all intelligent life. Jake nodded, knowing that the real test of their alliance was about to begin. The Zelani collective had forced two very different species to become partners, but that partnership would have to be strong enough to save the galaxy. The combined human-Vorthach fleet approached the Zelani homeworld with careful precision. Admiral Jake Morrison, who had been promoted after the alliance treaty, stood on the bridge of the new command ship alongside Admiral Zekthern. The vessel itself was a symbol of their partnership, designed using both human technology and Vorthach engineering principles. Zelani defense grid is activating, reported Commander Ryan Hill from his tactical station. They have more ships than we expected, but our intelligence was accurate about their positions. The battle plan they had developed used the strengths of both species. Human ships would use their speed and advanced sensors to confuse the enemy and find weak points in their defenses. Vorthach vessels would deliver powerful direct attacks that could break through Zelani armor and shields. All ships begin the operation, Jake ordered. Remember, our goal is to stop the biological weapon program and capture their research facilities intact. The first phase of the battle went exactly as planned. Human ships darted between Zelani formations, using unpredictable movement patterns that the enemy had never encountered before, while the Zelani tried to target the quick human vessels. Vorthach battleships moved into position and unleashed devastating attacks. On the surface of the Zelani homeworld, Marine Sergeant Tony Rodriguez led a mixed assault team toward the main research facility. Fighting beside him was his former opponent, Kraxamel, the Vorthach champion he had faced in the combat arena months ago. Humans take left approach. Vorthach takes center, Tony directed as they moved through the enemy facility. We will meet at the main laboratory. Kraxamel nodded and charged forward with his traditional Vorthach battle cry. But this time, instead of just using brute force, he was using tactics that Tony had taught him, moved with purpose and intelligence, not just rage. Meanwhile, Tony led his human team using techniques he had learned from the Vorthach. He was more aggressive and direct than human soldiers usually were, but also more effective against the surprised Zelani defenders in space. The battle was turning in favor of the Alliance. The Zelani had expected to fight either human cleverness or Vorthach strength, but they were not prepared for both at the same time. Their command ship is trying to escape, reported Lieutenant Katie Brooks from her communications station. Should we pursue? Admiral Zekthorn looked at the tactical display. Let them run. Our priority is destroying their research and capturing their scientists, Jake agreed. The important thing is stopping their biological weapon program. We can deal with escape ships later. Deep inside the research facility, Dr. Alex Turner and healer Nix Thursday were working together to secure the Zelani laboratory equipment. They had developed an effective partnership over the months of preparation, combining human medical knowledge with Vorthach biological expertise. These research samples are still active, Alex warned as he carefully handled containers full of dangerous biological material. We need to destroy them before they can be used as weapons. Nix Thursday used her natural Vorthach strength to move heavy equipment while Alex used his precise human techniques to safely neutralize the biological threats. Neither of them could have done the job alone, but together they were making rapid progress. The weapon they created is more terrible than we thought, Nix Thursday said as she read through Zelani research files. It would have killed billions of people across dozens of worlds. But it will never be used now, Alex replied firmly. We stopped them in time. Engineer Maria Santos was working with Vorthach Techmaster Forge Cool to download all the Zelani research data. This information would help both species develop better defenses against biological weapons in the future. Human computer systems are much faster at processing data, Forge Cool observed. But Vorthach security protocols are better at preventing the information from being corrupted or destroyed. That is why we work so well together, Maria replied as she transferred files to secured storage devices. We each bring different strengths to every problem. The battle for the Zelani homeworld lasted only 6 hours. Their ships were designed to fight individual opponents, not alliance fleets that combined different tactical approaches. As the fighting ended, both human and Vorthach crews worked together to secure the captured facilities and rescue any prisoners the Zelani had been holding for their experiments. 3 weeks later, the victory celebration took place on New Terra Station, a joint facility that had been quickly constructed in neutral space. The station was designed to serve as a permanent symbol of the human-Vorthach alliance. Jake walked through the celebration areas, watching humans and Vorthach enjoying activities together. In one section, human musicians were teaching Vorthach warriors how to play simple instruments. The aliens were surprisingly good at it, though their music was much louder and more dramatic than humans usually preferred. In another area, Vorthach combat instructors were showing human children safe fighting techniques while their parents watched nervously. The young humans were fascinated by the alien warriors. The Vorthach seemed to enjoy teaching them about honor and courage. Dr. Lisa Park and scientist Vex Quinn had established a joint research laboratory on the station. Their work together had already produced several important discoveries about evolution, adaptation, and the development of intelligent life. Working with humans has taught me that intelligence comes in many different forms, Vex Quinn explained to a group of visiting scientists from both species. Vorthach developed intelligence focused on survival and combat. Humans developed intelligence focused on cooperation and creativity. And now we can learn from each other, Lisa added. Neither approach is better than the other. They're just different ways of solving the challenges of existence. Captain Morrison, now Admiral Morrison, had his office on New Terra Station alongside Admiral Zekthurn. The two leaders had become close friends during their months of cooperation, and they were already planning new joint missions to explore distant parts of the galaxy. Zekthurn observed as they reviewed reports from their respective governments. Vorthach are learning to value wisdom and cooperation along with strength. Humans are discovering that they can be formidable when they need to protect what they believe in. Jake nodded as he looked out at the stars through the office window. Both our peoples are becoming something new. It's not less than what we were before, but more. The most remarkable changes were happening among the younger generation, human and Vorthach children who attended the integrated schools on New Terra Station. We're growing up as friends, learning each other's languages and customs as naturally as breathing. In the recreation areas, young humans and Vorthach played games that combined physical challenges with creative problem-solving. They were inventing new sports, new art forms, and new ways of thinking that neither species had ever developed alone. Tony Rodriguez had been assigned as head of security for New Terra Station. He worked closely with Kraxmull, who had requested a transfer from the Vorthach military to serve at the Alliance facility. How'd you know, Tony said to his alien partner. As they completed their daily patrol, a year ago, I never would have imagined being best friends with someone who could tear me in half without trying. Cracksmall made the rumbling sound that Vorthach used for laughter. And I never imagined respecting someone so much smaller and weaker than myself. But you taught me that strength comes from the spirit, not just from muscles. The success of the alliance was attracting attention from other species across the galaxy. Delegations from dozens of different civilizations came to New Terra Station. To learn about the partnership between humans and Vorthach, many of these species had conflicts with their neighbors, or were facing threats they could not handle alone. They wanted to understand how two such different peoples had managed to become effective allies and friends. The secret is not to try to become the same, Jake explained to a group of visiting ambassadors. The secret is to appreciate what makes each other different and find ways to use those differences as strengths. Admiral Zekthern added his own perspective. Both our species were transformed by this alliance, but we did not lose what made us who we are. Vorthach are still strong warriors. Humans are still peaceful explorers. But now we are more than we were before. As the years passed, the Human-Vorthach Alliance became a model for cooperation throughout the galaxy. Former enemies began to seek peaceful solutions to their conflicts. Species that had never spoken to each other started trading and sharing knowledge. The transformation that had begun with a simple first contact had spread far beyond just humans and Vorthach. The entire galaxy was becoming a more cooperative and peaceful place. Standing on the observation deck of New Terra Station,
watching
human and Vorthach children play together while their parents worked side by side. Jake realized that the strongest Deathworld species in the galaxy had indeed been transformed by meeting humanity. But humanity had been transformed too, discovering strengths they never knew they possessed, and learning that peace and strength could exist together. The future stretched ahead of them, full of possibilities that neither species could have imagined alone.